The Okavango Delta in Botswana floods inland to create a vast freshwater labyrinth that supports one of the planet's densest concentrations of wildlife. Do you know Socotra Island's dragonblood trees, with umbrella-shaped crowns and crimson sap, evolved in isolation so strange they inspired alien planet myths and still harbor plant species found nowhere else on Earth? Perched at 430 meters on a razor-thin Andean ridge, Machu Picchu cradles a rare collision of high-altitude cloud forest and granite citadel that shelters species found nowhere else. Do you know Machu Picchu's terraces and irrigation channels create microclimates so precise that ancient farmers cultivated crops at different frost lines on the same hillside? Beyond the stone walls, misted ravines hide orchids that bloom in patterns tied to pre-Incan agricultural calendars, a botanical code still being deciphered by scientists. Even the nearly mortarless, tightly interlocking stonework channels water so masterfully that engineers study Inca drainage for lessons in resilience. Under the shadow of Huayna Picchu, llamas graze terraces that double as archaeological records, preserving pollen, seeds, and soil layers that map centuries of cultivation. The site's alignment with the surrounding peaks marks astronomical events with such accuracy that sunrise on the solstice traces pathways across sacred plazas. Walking from the Sun Gate toward the citadel, hikers cross ancient causeways where footsteps echo a forgotten rhythm, linking Machu Picchu to the wider Sacred Valley complex. Recent excavations have even uncovered plant residues, suggesting ceremonial use of coca and other native species in patterns that bridge daily life and cosmology. As clouds part, terraces ripple like layers of green and stone, each level a testament to adaptation, where altitude, ecology, and spirituality were woven into a single tapestry. And when you follow the trail downward to Aguas Calientes, the jump from sacred ruin to bustling riverside town reveals how modern livelihoods have grown from ancient circuits of travel and trade. The deeper secret of Machu Picchu is not only its stones, but the invisible networks, water, pilgrimage, and plant knowledge that connect mountain to market across centuries. Each step between shrines, terraces, and valleys stitches past and present, inviting questions about how a civilization sustained such complex ecological intelligence without a written code. So the next time mist rolls through the citadel, remember, Machu Picchu is not just an isolated relic, but a living archive of experiments and landscape management that still teach us resilience. Stay with us, and we will trace those experiments on the ground, from the highest peak to the river below, revealing secrets few travelers notice. The narrow Syke of Petra in Jordan slices through Jurassic-era rose-red sandstone that glows at sunrise, a geological rarity matched by few places on Earth. Do you know that Petra, tucked into southern Jordan, holds cliff-carved facades whose layered sandstone seems to breathe with shifting light? Walk with me past weathered columns, and you can still feel the pulse of ancient Nabatean engineers who rerouted seasonal floods. They carved channels and cisterns into the living rock, turning an unforgiving desert gorge into a thriving trade hub. The treasury's rose-hued face appears suddenly from the Syke, like a theatrical reveal preserved for 2,000 years. Inside its shadow, glyphs and niches whisper of ritual, commerce, and an empire that turned rock into history. But Petra is more than a single monument. Its labyrinth of tombs, monasteries, and high paths stretches across canyons and plateaus. High above the treasury, the monastery crowns a ridge where sunlight paints the cliffs with boughs and lavender tones. At the end of narrow trails, you meet tomb facades worn by pilgrims, traders, and the wind of countless generations. Petra's waterworks reveal its secret, an ancient mastery of desert hydrology that kept orchards and caravans alive. As twilight falls, the sandstone cools and shadows pull the colors deeper, making each carving read like a new language. Scholars still discover inscriptions inside caves and niches that rewrite small details of Nabatean life and toil. Archaeology here is detective work performed on cliff faces and in shadowed courtyards, revealing surprises beneath centuries of dust. Today, Petra asks visitors to slow down, to read stone like a living archive, and to listen rather than to fuss. One path leads to another, and every carved doorway hints at the next hidden courtyard, the next story waiting to unfold. If you think you know Petra from pictures, prepare for its textures, its sounds, and the way light makes history move. Stay with the canyon, follow its water traces, and you will find how this carved city taught the desert to sustain life. Tonle Sap, Cambodia's immense freshwater lake, reverses its flow twice a year and swells into a flooded forest system that supports one of the richest inland fisheries on Earth. Do you know Angkor Wat was conceived as a monumental replica of Mount Meru? Its central towers and causeways aligned, so sunrise and reflection functioned as an ancient astronomical calendar for the Khmer elite. The temple's bas-reliefs unfurl like a vast illustrated epic, recording celestial battles, processions, and cosmologies with such precision that historians still argue over their true narratives. Many visitors race for the iconic sunrise and miss the quieter passageways where engineers once channeled water through intricate moats and reservoirs, a hydraulic mastery that kept the city alive. Step toward Ta Prohm, and you find trees braided into stone. Strangler figs and silk cotton roots have knotted towers into organic sculptures that seem to be both destroying and protecting the past. From Ta Prohm, a narrow route leads into Angkor Thom's heart, where the Bayon's vast carved faces watch over streets planned to connect sovereign power with sacred space. Beneath the visible monuments lies an astonishing hydraulic network, arrays, canals, and reservoirs that transformed seasonal rains into a reliable water economy, supporting tens of thousands. When that system faltered, recent studies suggest that climate variability and deforestation, not only conflict, helped precipitate the city's slow abandonment. The same Tonle Sap that fed Angkor still sustains floating villages whose stilt houses and markets rise and fall with the lake's pulse, preserving fishing traditions that linked village life to temple wealth. Today, archaeologists use LiDAR to peel back the jungle canopy and reveal lost neighborhoods, while local artisans revive stone carving and silk weaving, tying past practices to present livelihoods. Walking from Angkor Wat's mirrored moat across its causeway toward Phnom Kulen shifts you from monumental stone cosmology into sacred waterfalls and riverbed carvings, a move that maps Cambodia's spiritual landscape in stone and water. Angkor endures not as a frozen relic, but as a living weave of engineering, ritual, and community, a site where the past keeps speaking, and Cambodian identity continues to be shaped. Indonesia holds the core of the Coral Triangle, boasting the highest marine biodiversity on Earth, a rarity few nations can claim. Do you know that the volcanic lava and ash from Mount Merapi in central Java not only shaped the landscape, but provided the dense stone used to carve Borobudur's monumental Built in the 9th century, Borobudur rises like a stone mandala from the Kedu Plain, its 9 stacked platforms covered in intricate bas-reliefs and 72 Buddha stupas. Fewer visitors realize that this architectural miracle was designed as a 3-dimensional guide to Buddhist cosmology, a pilgrimage written in stone rather than script. Each relief panel narrates journeys of moral choice, ancient Javanese life, and the migration of ideas across the Indonesian archipelago. The temple's stones weather the same monsoon rains and ash storms that nurture Java's terraces, connecting sacred art to the island's volatile natural cycles. During sunrise, mist from the rice fields rolls over the plain, framing stupas like islands in a pale sea and transforming geometry into living myth. Local artisans and restorers, working over decades, read these weathered stones as both scripture and survival manual, preserving techniques passed down through local lineages. Walk its circular terraces and you move from the desire-filled world to spirit's ascent, each step calibrated to change how light and shadow reveal the next story. And as Borobudur faces Mount Merapi, you sense an ongoing conversation between human devotion and the planet's restless forces, a connection that binds temples, volcanoes, and sea. Pilgrims still circumambulate the stupa in silence during Vesak, retracing routes used 1,000 years ago and renewing links across islands from Sumatra to Sulawesi. In the stone's grooves, you can find traces of ancient pigments and offerings, small fingerprints of people who kept the site alive through centuries of change. Borobudur's story reminds us that Indonesian culture is an archipelago of ideas where sea lanes carried monks, traders, and artists who blended Hindu, Buddhist, and indigenous traditions. To stand at the temple's rim is to witness both the reach of human imagination and the raw geometry of Java's natural world, a rare convergence of culture and earth. Beneath El Castillo, Mexico's Yucatan holds a dense network of cenotes that feed one of the planet's richest underground freshwater systems. Do you know the sacred cenote at Chichen Itza still contains sacrificial offerings and calls that span more than a millennium? El Castillo itself is a living calendar, 365 steps, precise shadows and seasonal echoes that map the solar year in stone. When you clap near the staircase, it produces a chirp resembling the Quetzal, an intentional acoustic trick by Maya builders. At equinox, a serpent of shadow appears to glide down the pyramid, transforming architecture into myth for onlookers. Beneath the plaza, pollen and artifacts remain sealed in mud, preserving ancient ecology and ritual offerings. The Great Ball Court records ritualized sport and diplomacy, its acoustics carrying whispers and declarations across its length. Archaeologists have recovered jade, gold, and textiles there that rewrite our map of pre-Columbian trade. Advanced channels and reservoirs reveal how the Maya captured rains and linked city life to the cenotes below. Each new find forces historians to rethink ritual practices, social hierarchies, and environmental management. Chichen Itza is a classroom of ancient knowledge where sunlight, sound, and water were all tools of power. Follow the next segment as we descend from the pyramid into the cenote to reveal one object that reshaped a civilization. Inside the cenote, ceremonial items are layered like pages of a book, telling stories of drought, devotion, and triye. One bronze-like mirror and several carved bones suggest contacts with distant regions and complex belief systems. Today, researchers use sonar and DNA to read those pages, revealing diet, disease, and climate shifts that shaped Maya choices. What seemed like ritual mystery becomes a forensic map of survival and innovation across centuries. Mount Kailash in Tibet soars to 6,638 meters and remains one of the world's few high peaks that has never been climbed because local faiths forbid scaling its sacred flanks. Do you know Mount Kailash is revered as the cosmic axis by Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and followers of Bon? And that four of Asia's greatest rivers, the Indus, Sutlej, Brahmaputra, and Karnali, rise from its neighborhood? Pilgrims still travel for days across the desolate Tibetan plateau to perform the Kora, a clockwise circumambulation of the mountain that measures roughly 52 kilometers. Some undertake it in a single grueling day, while others spend weeks, even years completing the route through endless full-body prostrations as acts of penance and devotion. Just below Kailash sits Lake Manasarovar, a crystalline basin so pure that local lore says a single sip can wash away a lifetime of sins. Next to it lies the dark lake Rakshastal, whose stony silence forms a stark yin to Manasarovar's yang, and together they anchor the mountain's spiritual landscape. Geologically, Kailash is an anomaly. It stands alone, a symmetrical pyramid of granite and gneiss, carved by ancient tectonics rather than the glacial serrations that crown neighboring peaks. The soundscape is not just wind and hooves, it's ceaseless chanting, whispered mantras, and the measured slap of pilgrim feet, a human current that circulates around the mountain year after year. Travelers who expect only harsh altitude find instead surprising biodiversity in the valleys, rare alpine meadows, marmots, and migratory birds that exploit the mountain's microclimates. Scientists have noted that the headwaters and wetlands around Kailash play an outsized role in feeding downstream ecosystems across South Asia, linking this sacred summit directly to millions of lives. Perhaps the strangest legacy is how belief itself has shaped access these days. Religious prohibition and local stewardship have left Kailash more pristine than many declared national parks. That preservation, combined with the mountain's mythic status, makes Mount Kailash one of the planet's rare places where nature and faith are inseparable, and where every footfall feels threaded through centuries. In the next section, we'll follow a young pilgrim's Kora and trace how the waters that begin here become the veins of distant civilizations. You'll learn why scientists worry that warming glaciers and changing rainfall patterns could ripple from these headwaters all the way to the rice terraces and cities downstream. Rising 200 meters above the Central Plains, Sigiriya in Sri Lanka is one of the world's tallest exposed monoliths, its summit crowned by ancient terraces and hydraulic gardens. Do you know Sigiriya's engineered water gardens and mirror-like pools were created over 1,300 years ago and still manage rainfall with astonishing precision? The fortress, carved into a lion-shaped gateway, was once the seat of King Kasyapa, and a daring blend of palace, fortress, and urban planning. Visitors climb vast stone stairways past vivid frescoes and terraces that reveal an ancient civilization's mastery of landscape and visual drama. Around the base, an elaborate network of moats and earthworks frames the rock like an island, protecting secrets written in stone and soil. Below the summit, the Sigiriya frescoes capture female figures in luminous pigments that survived centuries under sheltering rock. Archaeologists have uncovered sophisticated drainage channels, cisterns, and underground tunnels that link Sigiriya to nearby settlements and sacred caves. The fortress's gardens remain one of the earliest known examples of landscaped pleasure grounds in Asia, predating many European counterparts. Local legends speak of hidden libraries and buried riches, prompting careful excavations that peel back layers of occupation and environmental change. Today, the site is a fragile jewel, its conservation balancing tourism, agriculture, and the rhythms of monsoon rains that shaped its original design. Preserving Sigiriya means listening to stone and soil, studying ancient hydraulics, and protecting the stories etched into each worn stair and panel. Come with us as we climb, listen, and read the living inscriptions of Sigiriya, where every shadow hints at a secret waiting to be uncovered. The rock will show us how a single idea, power sculpted into landscape, can echo across centuries and across the island itself. By the end of this segment, you'll see Sigiriya not merely as ruins, but as a conversation between rulers, artists, engineers, and the land itself. And you might never look at a hill, a pool, or a painted wall the same way again. On the windswept Anatolian plateau, Turkey shelters Göbekli Tepe, an ancient hill where rare steppe wildflowers thread the stones of an extraordinary prehistoric sanctuary. Do you know, Göbekli Tepe was erected by hunter-gatherers more than 11,000 years ago, long before settled agriculture and long before the pyramids. Massive T-shaped pillars, some carved with serpents, foxes, and abstract hands, rise in circles that archaeologists say rewrite the timeline of human social complexity. Excavations revealed no homes, but ritual spaces, suggesting that worship and communal gatherings may have driven people to settle and farm near Bhitai. Stone after stone, Göbekli Tepe shows craftsmanship on a monumental scale at a time when chipped flint and bone were still the norm, and organized labor was thought impossible. The carvings preserve a visual language that hints at cosmology, seasonal soils, and perhaps shared myths among dispersed hunter-gatherer groups. Buried intentionally and deeply around 8000 BCE, the site remained hidden for millennia, its concealment posing one of archaeology's most intriguing mysteries. Modern discovery in the 1990s forced scholars to confront how ritual, politics, and identity may have emerged together in unexpected places. Walking the rim today, you can sense the scale of an ancient project that required coordination across generations and landscapes. From here, the narrative connects to neighboring Çatalhöyük and the Fertile Crescent, revealing a domino effect where ritual hubs seeded the rise of villages and eventually cities. Göbekli Tepe challenges every assumption about progress. It suggests that belief systems and monumental ritual could precede and even stimulate the agricultural revolution. As we peel back layers of soil and time, each stone offers a question. Who organized this labor? And what compelled people to carve beasts into the night? The answers remain fragmentary, but the site stands as a reminder that human ingenuity and imagination shaped history far earlier than we guessed. In the next section, we'll trace how those early rituals echo across Anatolia and beyond, linking Göbekli Tepe's pillars to the wider story of civilization's first leaps. And while technology and excavation continue to refine dates and meanings, the visceral power of those carved pillars persists, a salient chorus that pulls our past into focus. This is not just an archaeological site. It's an invitation to reconsider when and why people began to build shared worlds that outlived any single lifetime. Lake Titicaca, straddling Bolivia and Peru, is the world's highest navigable lake at 3,812 meters and shelters ancient islands whose stone foundations predate national borders. Do you know Lake Titicaca hides reed islands, Uros floating communities that are rebuilt every few years and supported by a unique Totora ecosystem found nowhere else at that altitude? On Isla del Sol and Isla de la Luna, legends cling to the rocks. Locals still point to sunken steps and Inca foundations that some archaeologists argue mark the mythic birthplace of the Inca. The lake's cold, oxygen-thin waters preserve reed boats and pottery in ways that rewrite assumptions about pre-Columbian naval engineering across the high Andes. From Copacabana's pilgrimage shrines to Puno's festivals of dancing and giant fish offerings, living traditions stitch Bolivian and Peruvian shores into a continuous cultural shoreline. Even the lake's microclimates support pockets of quinoa terraces and potato varieties that botanical explorers once thought extinct, creating a genetic library vital to global food resilience. Beneath the surface, sonar surveys have revealed submerged plazas and terraces, prompting heated debates about climate-driven lake-level changes and the lost human landscapes now drowned. Boatmen who ply routes between islands speak of phantom lights and shifting currents that expose stone walls in drought years, offering tantalizing glimpses into a buried past. Scientific teams and local elders are now collaborating, combining sonar maps with oral histories to map a Titicaca that is both archaeological archive and living memory. That collaboration has led to surprising finds, carbon-dated textiles and reed construction techniques that connect modern Euro's craftsmanship directly to pre-Inca lineage. As the sun arcs over the Altiplano, the lake mirrors the sky with uncanny clarity, turning island silhouettes into floating myths and inviting visitors to cross between countries and centuries in a single boat ride. By the time we follow a small motor across the glassy water, you'll hear why Lake Titicaca is less a border and more a braided story of survival, invention, and stubborn human creativity. Aokigahara Forest, clinging to the northwest slopes of Mount Fuji in Japan, grows on black lava so dense that magnetic compasses can be unreliable. Do you know Aokigahara hides an underground labyrinth of lava tubes and ice-filled caverns that scientists only recently began mapping? Walking its floor feels different. Trees stand so tightly together their roots weave over hardened lava like sculpted ropes. The soil here is thin and mineral-rich, forcing plant life into stunted sideways battles for light, creating carpets of moss unseen elsewhere. Sound behaves strangely inside Aokigahara. The porous volcanic rock absorbs echoes, so conversations fall away, as if the forest itself is swallowing noise. Local guides say even the wind seems to pause between trunks, creating pockets of silence that amplify the smallest foothold. That silence fed centuries of myth. Aokigahara is tied to legends of Yurei, spirits said to linger where grief took root. But beyond folklore, the forest preserves rare insect species and unique lichens that thrive only on the cold, iron-rich lava substrate. Yet those who study it insist the most important story is ecological, how life reclaims lava and builds complexity from catastrophe. Stand at the edge and you see Mount Fuji soaring above. Step inside and you enter a world where time behaves differently, folded into rock and root. What looks like silence is actually a slow conversation between living organisms and a landscape forged in fire. Tomorrow, we'll trace the hidden caves, meet the scientists mapping the subsoil, and uncover the species that survive where most plants cannot. how this forest's secrets challenge what we know about recovery after volcanic devastation, and why Aokigahara remains both fragile and fiercely alive. We'll also hear from locals whose family histories are woven with the forest's myths, and from conservationists racing to protect its rare habitats. By the end, you'll see Aokigahara not as a single story of silence and sorrow, but as a layered landscape of geology, biology, and human memory. Socotra Island, Yemen harbors the dragon blood tree, an umbrella-shaped sentinel whose crimson resin and inverted canopy are found in almost no other place on Earth. Do you know Socotra's flora includes hundreds of species that evolved in isolation, with bizarre bottle trees and frankincense shrubs adapted to wind, salt, and drought? The island's surreal ridgelines and limestone plateaus hold caves where ancient shells and fossils whisper of a time when Socotra belonged to a very different ocean. Its jagged mountains drop into coral gardens and turquoise coves where reef fish, turtles, and endemic mollusks complete an ecosystem strangers to the mainland. Walking under the dragon blood trees feels like stepping onto another world. Yet every unwilthra has a practical purpose: water storage, sun shading, or resin used for medicine and dye. Local Socotris have lived in harmony with this isolation for millennia, speaking a language that carries traces of ancient trade routes and preserving knowledge of plants barely known to science. Scientists still discover new species here every few years, tiny insects and plants that challenge our ideas of evolution and resilience. The island's windswept plains also produce honey, famed across the region for its rare aromatic notes made by bees that forage on endemic blooms. Even the coastline tells a strange story, with giants of sand dunes and mangrove pockets forming refuges for migratory birds and secretive reptiles. From Socotra's quirky biodiversity to the deep blue channels that link it to mainland Yemen and the wider Indian Ocean, the island is a living laboratory of isolation and connection. Visiting Socotra is to meet evolution's experiments, face to face, and to confront how fragile such singular landscapes can be in a changing world. In the coming minutes, we'll trace trails from dragon blood forests to the island's sea caves and meet the people who keep its stories alive. The Banawe rice terraces climb 1,500 meters into the Cordillera and were hand-carved into volcanic slopes by the Ifugao over 2 millennia, their contour lines resembling living topographic maps. Do you know the Banawe rice terraces still rely on a gravity-fed irrigation system that channels mountain spring water through silk-like networks of stone-lined canals? The terraces are not only agricultural feats, but also living archives of indigenous engineering, where soil, water, and ritual intertwine to keep terraces fertile year after year. Millennia-old knowledge decides when to plant and harvest, and rice varieties, unique to Ifugao, carry flavors and genes found nowhere else on Earth. Walk along narrow ridge lines, and you'll cross footpaths used for generations, passing stone rice granaries and ancestral shrines that mark stories of harvest and family ties. Local elders still perform rice rituals, and their songs map seasonal cycles as precisely as any weather report. The terrace's verticality creates microclimates where mist-fed ferns, endemic orchids, and rare bird species thrive between paddy fields and forest patches. Those strips of forest act as living dams, filtering water and stabilizing slopes, a natural partnership that ancient farmers understood instinctively. Travel from Banawe toward the amphitheater-shaped village of Batad, and the terraces morph into an even steeper maze, revealing how communities adapted terrace architecture to extreme terrain. Further along, highland trails lead to Sagada's limestone cliffs and echoing caves, showing how mountain cultures across the Cordillera share roots, rituals, and rice traditions. Conservation efforts now blend modern engineering with ancestral practice, teaching younger Ifugao to repair walls, reintroduce heirloom seeds, and steward water lines. Protecting the terraces means safeguarding not just stunning scenery, but a living cultural landscape that feeds bodies, identities, and stories. Standing on a terrace edge, you can read centuries of human choices etched into the land, a testimony to sustainable design long before the phrase existed. Understanding Banawe opens a window to how people and place co-create resilience, and prompts you to ask how modern societies might learn from these living fields. Beneath the spiny forests of Madagascar and the coral cathedrals of the Seychelles, ancient life persists in forms found nowhere else on Earth. These isolated ecosystems connect across the Mozambique Channel to the shimmering lagoons and living reefs that fed seafarers for millennia. Crossing the Indian Ocean leads us to the volcanic highlands of northern Tanzania, where Mount Kilimanjaro's glaciers carve a white crown atop equatorial sky. Those same meltwaters feed rivers that have long sustained the savannas of the Serengeti, stitching predator and prey into an endless seasonal drama. From the wide plains, the story flows west to the braided channels of the Okavango, where water becomes an island maker and a lifeline for elephants and herons. That living water finally finds its way to waterfalls that roar like time itself at Victoria Falls, and then fades into the arid lungs of the Kalahari. where the Kalahari gives way to the Namib, the world's oldest desert rights dunes as high as cities, their shifting ridges catching the red light of sunset. Those dunes overlook the Atlantic, where cold Benguela currents upwell life that once filled the vats of ancient whale bones and nourished coastal towns. Further south, the Cape's Table Mountain watches over a floral kingdom of fynbos, tiny blooms that hold more plant families than many countries. This botanical richness threads through rivers and valleys into the mountainous spine of the Drakensberg, where rock art keeps human stories alive. Across this continent of extremes, the human pulse ties each landscape to the next. Fishermen, herders, farmers, and city makers adapt with ancient knowledge and surprising innovation. And if you leave Africa today, you carry with you not just memories of places, but questions that only these wild thresholds can answer. So come back, look closer, and let the continent keep revealing its hidden wonders.